Have you ever really thought about how a seemingly random group of nomadic tribes managed to sweep across the globe with such absolute, unstoppable force? Well, in this explainer, we're diving deep into the highly structured, frankly revolutionary military tactics that allowed Genghis Khan to build history's largest empire. We're going to break down the mechanics, the mindset, and the sheer logistical brilliance that drove their massive victories.
24 million square kilometers. Just let that number sink in for a second. To wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about, at its absolute peak, the Mongol Empire stretched all the way from the Pacific Ocean right over to Eastern Europe. That makes it the largest contiguous land empire in human history. It's a footprint so ridiculously huge, it fundamentally rewired global history, connecting East and West in ways literally no one had ever imagined before.
But you know, here's where the story gets really wild. Considering its founder was an abandoned, hunted, and enslaved kid born into extreme poverty on the unforgiving Mongolian steppe, how on earth did someone who started with absolutely nothing manage to orchestrate this level of global geopolitical dominance?
Well, here's exactly how we're going to deconstruct this unstoppable machine. We'll look at the impossible empire, their radical meritocracy, the Mongol war machine itself, how they were masters of psychological warfare, their logistics, and the Yam network, and finally, the legacy of the conqueror. So kicking things off with Section 1, the impossible empire, from steppe to superpower. It all really begins with the incredibly brutal origins of a boy originally named Temujin.
Born around 1162, Temujin's life was immediately thrust into chaos when his father was poisoned by rivals. And it gets worse. Shortly after, his entire family was completely abandoned by their own tribe to face the extreme poverty of the steppe alone. To survive, they literally had to fight for every single meal. It was such a severe, cutthroat environment that during a survival dispute, Temujin actually killed his own half-brother. So this wasn't exactly a childhood of privilege, right? It was a brutal struggle that forged a completely relentless survival instinct.
Which brings us right into Section 2, radical meritocracy, rewarding the capable. You see, that brutal upbringing led to a completely unconventional, out-of-the-box approach to building an army.
Think about warfare in Temujin's era. Traditional armies operated on a really strict aristocratic hierarchy, rewarding noble birth and family connections above basically everything else. But Genghis Khan, he took that old playbook and threw it entirely out the window. It was kind of like the ultimate ancient startup. He promoted commanders and soldiers based on pure loyalty, skill, and discipline. Honestly, it didn't matter at all who your dad was. If you could deliver on the battlefield, you rose through the ranks. And this created a fiercely loyal, highly competent force that just completely outclassed their aristocratic, status-obsessed enemies.
Okay, moving to Section 3, the Mongol war machine, technology and speed. Now we're getting to the really fun part, breaking down the actual mechanical gears of this military powerhouse.
The average Mongol warrior was an absolute master of mobility and lethal precision. Their tactical toolkit was terrifyingly effective. We're talking composite bows fired by highly trained horse archers who could shoot with pinpoint accuracy while riding at breakneck speeds. And to maintain that relentless pace, well, warriors traveled with multiple horses, just swapping them out on the fly so their mounts literally never got tired. Plus, they coordinated all this chaos in total silence using signal flags backed by an incredibly advanced intelligence network that sniffed out enemy weaknesses way before a single arrow was ever fired.
But their absolute signature tactic, the feigned retreat. Just imagine the ironclad discipline it takes for an entire army to pretend to panic and run away. They would convince the enemy they'd won, basically baiting them into breaking their defensive lines to chase them down. Then, exactly when the enemy force was stretched out, disorganized, and exhausted, the Mongols would turn on a dime and launch a devastating, perfectly coordinated ambush. It was a total masterpiece of lethal adaptability.
And that leads us to Section 4, Masters of Psychological Warfare, Fear as a Weapon. Because as the empire expanded across China, Central Asia, and beyond, they definitely didn't just rely on bows and horses.
No, they conquered entire kingdoms by weaponizing fear itself. The strategy was just chillingly calculated. First step, gather advanced intelligence. Next, crank up the psychological intimidation. If a city dared to resist, the Mongols unleashed highly effective siege warfare and absolute mass destruction. And the crucial part? They made absolutely sure the horrifying stories of that destruction spread to the next city on their list. The reputation became so utterly terrifying that many enemies just surrendered on the spot without fighting a single battle.
They literally won wars purely through the paralyzing dread of what would happen if you said no. All right, Section 5, Logistics and the Yam Network, Moving an Empire. So, hearing all this raises a pretty massive question, right? How on earth do you manage, supply, and communicate with an army moving at those relentless speeds over such vast distances? Well, the answer brings us right back to that staggering figure, 24 million square kilometers. To actually govern a territory that massive, they created the Yam Network. Honestly, think of it as the Pony Express, but centuries earlier and on a massive imperial scale. It was this hyper-fast relay system made up of way stations spread out all across the empire. Messengers would ride at top speed, swap their exhausted horses for fresh ones at a Yam station, and just keep riding. It was a complete game changer. It allowed them to move resources, intelligence, and military orders faster than anyone else in the entire medieval world.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Legacy of the Conqueror, Beyond the Battlefield. Because Genghis Khan passed away in 1227, and he left behind a deeply, deeply complex empire.
You see, the Mongol Empire was far more than just a well-oiled military machine. Right alongside their unmatched mobility and ruthless discipline, they actually rolled out some incredibly groundbreaking civil innovations. They championed the security of the Silk Road, which basically supercharged global trade. They fostered massive cross-cultural exchanges between East Asia and Europe. They set up that extensive postal system we just talked about, and in a lot of regions, they even enforced strict policies of religious tolerance. Their administrative genius was honestly just as revolutionary as their battlefield tactics.
Of course, because of their fearsome reputation, history has a way of blurring with myth. It's a super common misconception that Genghis Khan conquered the known world purely through mindless, chaotic destruction. But the actual historical fact is that he built the largest contiguous land empire ever seen by creating a highly organized administration that actively expanded global diplomacy and trade. And adding to the mystique, so much of his personal life remains a complete legend to this day, including the exact cause of his death and the location of his grave, which, crazy enough, has literally never been found.
All of which leaves us with one final lingering thought to chew on. By radically transforming warfare, trade, and the entire trajectory of Eurasian history, Genghis Khan undeniably reshaped the world forever. But as we sit here and weigh his tactical genius and civil innovations against the immense devastation and sheer terror he utilized to pull it all off, you really have to ask yourself, was Genghis Khan history's greatest conqueror or its most destructive leader? I'm going to leave you to think about that one.